Emotional Development of Adolescents Ages 15 through 18 by Helen Goodroad, Jasmine Islam, Marguerite Sutton, and Irene Jr. Emotional development is expression, understanding, and regulation of emotions. That can include neuro, cognitive, social, and physical. Emotional development is connected to other areas of development, such as perceiving emotions, understanding emotions, managing emotions, and using emotions. Adolescents' emotional development, in terms of their peers, is the control of emotions. There are positive relationships. Mood swings are more so of the negative relationships with their peers. Romantic relationships create both negative and positive emotions, and girls who date more tend to be more depressed. When a transition occurs in late adolescence, their moods are not as extreme, their hormone levels settle down, and they have a maturation of prefrontal cortex. Romantic relationship friendships create challenging emotions. Adolescents should understand how to recognize emotion and how to deal with stress, anger, and sadness. There's a Center for Disease Control and Prevention for emotional development milestones for adolescents ages 15 through 18 called CDC. At the CDC Center, adolescents can experience better ability to care for and share feelings with others. They can also experience intimate relationships which begin to evolve. They may also experience feelings of sadness and depression, which could increase, which will result in negative behavior effects such as drugs, alcohol, or unsafe sex. Lady Gaga did a podcast at Yale University in which she talked about being a teenager and teenage emotions. In the podcast, Lady Gaga stresses the value of creating your own emotional state. Make decisions based on what makes one happy. A nationwide study of teenage emotions found that 75% of all reported emotions were negative, fatigue and stress related. Transitions also peak in emotional development for adolescents. At the end of high school, new emotions arise, as well as transition to college or a job, causing adolescents to be more independent. Emotional roller coaster slows down as teens age. Physical, mental maturity evolves. The New Science of the Teenage Brain is a good source to read about the teenage brain development. Adolescent angst is not purely psychological. Brain development during adolescence results in more anxiety and more fear. It also can cause adolescents to have a harder time learning how not to be afraid. Amygdala and the prefrontal cortex are some key parts of the adolescent's brain. The amygdala, this region of the brain processes fear, and the prefrontal cortex is the region of the brain for reasoning and executive control. The teen brain experiences enhanced capacity for fear and anxiety, but is underdeveloped when it comes to calm reasoning. The teen brain is less able to modulate emotions. The adolescent brain demonstrates that the upper prefrontal lobe is less used than in the adult brain when reading emotion. And the amygdala, the emotional region of the teen brain, is showing more activity compared to the adult. Just because a teenager is physically mature, their brain may not be mature. Teens on the left use less of the prefrontal upper region than adults on the right when reading emotion. The prefrontal part of brain carries out executive functions. Lower part of the brain is associated with emotion. Frontal lobe of the brain helps determine the consequences of behavior. Brain's reward center. This area of the brain also develops before the prefrontal cortex, resulting in a teenager's risky behavior. A cartoon that was developed in terms of the brain's reward center reads, "Do you think it's true that humans use only 10% of their brains?" Yep. We just invented tomato hockey, and often less. Study on ability to read emotions. Adults correctly identify fear 100%. Teenagers correctly identified fear about 50%. Information as it is coming into the teenager's brain, how it is organized in their brain, and then how they respond are all affected by the fact that their brains are not equipped to process it accurately. For example, they may interpret anger when it isn't anger, or sadness when it isn't sadness. This also means that their response and behavior will not match the adults. If teenagers cannot correctly identify feelings on an adolescent's face, how does this affect their interactions with parents, teachers, and peers? Just because a teenager is physically mature, their brain is not able to appreciate the consequences and weigh information the same way adults do. Teenagers respond stronger with the emotional response than they do with evaluating the consequences of what they're doing. Impulsivity. There is often miscommunication in what the teenager is interpreting and how they respond. This is why teenagers do not look at the world and react the way adults do. John Green says, "I find it really offensive when people say that the emotional experiences of teenagers are less real or less important than those of adults. I am an adult and I used to be a teenager. And so I can tell you with some authority that my feelings then were as real as my feelings are now." An emotion that many adolescents experience is anxiety. Cognitive behavior therapy is not as effective as some may think. Stimulant use actually increases anxiety and is the source of most adult anxiety disorders. 20% of adolescents in the U.S. experience diagnosable anxiety disorder. Psychotherapy teaching adolescents to be unafraid doesn't work because their brains aren't there yet. So many adolescents are on Ritalin and Adderall for ADHD, which worsens anxiety and makes it more difficult for them to learn how to be unafraid. Most adult anxiety disorders develop during the teenage years. Most adolescents learn to control their fear as their prefrontal cortex develops at around age 25. 20% of U.S. adults have a diagnosable anxiety disorder, probably resulting from genetics and environmental resources. The importance of educators. Educators want students to succeed in their academic, personal, and social lives. They have the motivation and ability to achieve, establish positive relationships with their peers and adults, adapt to the complex demands of growth and development, contribute to their peer group, family, school, and community, and they want their students to make responsible decisions that enhance their health and avoid risky behaviors. All of the above requires understanding of adolescents' emotional development. Educators have a significant opportunity to affect the positive development of youth, not only through what they teach, but also through the quality of their social interactions and relationships with youth. Educators affect the positive development of youth by managing behavior in the classroom and by modeling social and emotional processes. What can educators do? There are social and emotional learning programs that provide systematic classroom instruction that builds children's capacity. These capacities help adolescents to recognize and manage their emotions, appreciate the perspectives of others, establish pro-social goals, and solve problems, as well as use a variety of interpersonal skills to effectively and ethically handle different tasks. Educators can also create positive student outcomes with these strategies. They can develop caring classroom communities by monitoring their behavior rather than punishing and by establishing a democratic classroom. They can enhance students' motivation to learn by providing informative feedback, focusing on improvement and effort, expressing high expectations, and fostering interests and engagement. They can plan and deliver engaging, assessment-driven instruction by organizing content and activities and individualizing instruction using assessment data. They can support students' deep processing and self-regulation skills by modeling thinking processes, balancing appropriate challenge level, and encouraging self-regulation. The framework for social and emotional learning includes self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, social awareness, self-management as well. Self-awareness, meaning accurately assessing one's feelings, interests, values, and strengths. Self-management, regulating one's emotions to handle stress, control impulses, and persevere in overcoming obstacles. Social awareness, taking the perspective of and emphasizing with others, recognizing and appreciating individuals and group similarities and differences. Relationship management, establishing and maintaining healthy and rewarding cooperative relationships. And responsible decision making, making decisions based on consideration of ethical standards, safety concerns, appropriate social norms, respect for others, and probable consequences of various actions. Effects of social and emotional learning: improved academic performance, achievement scores an average of 11 percentile points higher than students who did not receive CEL instruction. Improved attitudes and behaviors. There's a greater motivation to learn, deeper commitment to school, increased time devoted to schoolwork, and better classroom behavior. There were fewer negative behaviors, decreased disruptive class behavior, non-compliance, aggression, delinquent acts, and disciplinary referrals, as well as reduced emotional distress. There were fewer reports of student depression, anxiety, stress, and social withdrawal. Here are all the references and resources we use to learn more about the emotional development of adolescents ages 15 through 18. You could feel free to look at any of the articles or podcasts to learn more about the adolescents and how they develop emotionally. Thank you.